So we have RENE coming up in a couple of weeks with Jody O'Brien. This is a great course. She's going to be incorporating some additional content for us. It's very topical regarding the mandatory home inspection regulation that Massachusetts is rolling out shortly. So she's going to be incorporating that into her presentation. But this is a really great course to sharpen your skills when it comes to negotiations for your clients. And it's at a great rate of $225. It's going to be offering 6 hours of CE credit as well. So if you are someone who's coming up to your license renewal period, this is a great way to get some additional CE under your belts. To register, you can click on the QR or snap the QR code right there, and we'll bring you right to the registration. We are having a special 1031 tax deferred exchange CE course coming up at Cape Cod 5 headquarters at HQ5. They're going to be doing a social afterwards as well. So you can either come to both or just one, but there's going to be a 2-hour CE credit that's being offered from 2 to 4, and then an optional social afterwards. So we hope that we'll see you there. They're looking forward to hosting us at their beautiful headquarters. There are 2 separate registration links, one for CE and then one for the social. So if you're planning on attending both, please register for both of them so we can have an accurate count for Cape Cod 5. In addition to what we just talked about, we have some upcoming CE as well. So on 1028, we have real estate advertising compliance and the law. We have offers coming up, which I think will be a really interesting course to offer. We have Code of Ethics and then Protecting the Protected Classes in Real Estate. So all of those will be free for you if you're a member of CCI AOR. So please sign up if you need some additional CE. And then we also have, let me just move this here real quick. Here we go. Some upcoming MLS training. So this Wednesday, we have Remind Docs training coming up at 1 o'clock. On Thursday, we have our quick dip of navigating distribution options to meet your seller's needs. And then on 8/26, we have Cubicasa, which is a great option for you to use for floor plans in the MLS. So without any further delay, I would like to welcome Charlotte. Let me just go back to my screen over here. So Charlotte Green is first vice president of Cape Cod Cooperative Bank. They're our generous sponsor for Zoomed In on Real Estate each year. So we're happy to have Charlotte here with us today. Charlotte, if you want to share your screen, I can stop mine because I think you might have a couple of slides if I remember you saying correctly.
I certainly do. I love some good slides. Thank you for having me today. We've been doing this for a number of years. Jen, it does look like Sharon needs to be turned on for me. But if that can't happen, I'm happy to, or am I sharing my screen? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, as a panelist, you should have already had sharing
Okay,
capability, but it looks like, there you go.
bear with me. Okay, awesome. I'm
After all
attuned
these
now.
years with Zoom, we're still like dealing with all the technology challenges,
I
but
know.
thank
Well,
you.
they update the technology and I get used to like the last format. But we've been doing this for a number of years with the association. And as I was putting together my slides for today, I was looking back at some that I did a number of years ago as we were anticipating some rate changes from the Federal Reserve. And I'm lucky enough to be meeting with you guys on an off month. The Federal Reserve met last month and they're going to be meeting again in September. And we did have a lot of reports coming out recently. So I wanted to just look back at the projection I pulled from 2023, which would have had that federal funds rate just down around 3.2% by now, if those predictions were accurate in 23. What's going on today and what's happened historically is those rates have not dropped as initially anticipated. Those federal fund rate drops have been pushed out. So now, the end of 2027, we're anticipating to be about where we were at the end of 2025, maybe a little bit higher. The federal funds rate is often thought of as something that dictates mortgage rates. We get a lot of calls when the Fed does drop rates asking if our mortgage rates have dropped. Mortgage rates have dropped. They're not directly tied to each other, but they are correlated. And the mortgage rates do move independently of the Fed funds rate. So sometimes they'll adjust downwards ahead of the Feds dropping their rates, just kind of baking those changes into the market. As of the end of July, for the September Fed meeting, there was a close to 40% anticipation in the market that we would see a 25 basis point cut in September. As of the jobs and employment reports that came out last week, traders are pricing in nearly 90% anticipation for a drop in September. So we might see a little bit of movement with the interest rates at that point in time. I wouldn't expect anything significant. And where the market is so confident in this upcoming drop, a lot of times we're going to see those changes in mortgage rates happen ahead of the actual meeting. And then again, we're also pricing in a smallly anticipated rate drop in December. I think a lot of these are just forecasts, as we can see with the previous slide. They're not always doing what the market is anticipating. And sometimes some of these reports we see throw curveballs like the job markets, inflation, and employment or unemployment as well. I'm going to touch too on what mortgage rates have done year over year as the Fed has incrementally dropped rates. We're closing out August 25, pretty close to where we were in August 24, with the 30-year fixed rate being just above 6.5%. So you can see, this looks like a lot of movement, but when you're talking, between 5 and 7%, there really has not been a significant amount of movement in the mortgage market this year. Although we do hear people continuing to hold and wait until this next Fed Reserve meeting to see if rates do drop and increase their affordability, their buying power, or just cut down the monthly payment on those upgrade homes and second homes that people are looking at. So some local trends that we've been seeing this year are thoughtful competition. I think recently we've seen some more blind competition where I'm doing whatever it takes to get into this house. We aren't seeing that type of aggression with our home buyers. We're seeing people incrementally go up over asking and sometimes come in under asking. Certain houses, when they're priced right, they're going quickly. But then we're seeing homes as well that are sitting a little bit longer just because they might have things that need some work, and buyers are a little bit more thoughtful and cautious in this market and in this economy. Something we're seeing a trend of too, I just think in line with that thoughtful competition is inspection fallout. So we're having those home inspections done, or buyers are having those home inspections done. And as things come up, if they can't be negotiated within the purchase price, we're seeing more fallout through inspection reports than we had this time last year, just as people are being thoughtful of the cost of getting into their home. On the flip side of that, we're seeing some seller concessions to cover closing costs and costs of inspection, which is a good sign for our home buyers and for the inventory out there, that there is a little bit more appetite for that type of profile in the market. We're still seeing a really, really hot, like middle market, low market for those first-time home buyers, step-up home buyers, and people relocating here. And where we're seeing a little bit of softening is that $1 to $2 million range. The super jumbos, people are still excited to buy those properties, but the folks who might have been affected a little bit more by the market recently are taking a step back and being a little bit more thoughtful about that second home purchase. We have some great options to help those buyers, which I'll talk about in our next slide. And then, of course, as you're all seeing, those property nuances, Title V questions, fails septic. I've got a cesspool, but I'm going to be hooking up to septic before too long. All those curveballs that come to us with Cape Cod real estate. Some of our customer success tools have been really savvy loan program utilization and our portfolio lending options. We have great options within the portfolio for some of those more nuanced properties, especially our seasonal properties out here on the Cape, where traditional financing might not be an option for them. We've also got a really great purchase special running for people in the jumbo market right now to help with that affordability. And over the past few years, we've developed some programs specific to our first-time home buyer and Cape Cod residents who might be upsizing a little bit, a little more space for the kids or for the dogs in the yard. And those have been really popular with very low down payments. We're also seeing people lean back into the FHA loans, which help them really maximize their buying power compared to other loans. And over the past year or two, we're seeing a lot stronger borrower profiles utilizing that FHA loan. So they do have really great credit. They might have the down payment, but they might also say, hey, I know that what I'm earning now isn't what I'm going to be earning in 2, 3 years. So I do want to stretch my debt to income utilizing this loan program and get into that slightly bigger house now versus waiting it out. Something that we're really big on focusing on here at the bank is road bump management. Things do come up throughout the loan process or during the pre-approval process that we want to be really well ahead of so that our buyers and then our realtor partners have smooth sailing during the financing road. So we really try to have an eye on what might be problematic down the line, the nuances, again, with the property, the buyer profiles that could cause delays so that we're able to be ahead of them. Something that's come up recently are, and Jen, you and I were talking about this, was the Davenport properties that were developed through what the 70s and 80s. They all put a deed restriction on those properties where they have a right of first refusal to buy that home back when it goes on the market at whatever the seller has agreed upon for an accepted offer. That's something that comes up with FHA loans being problematic. So an example of how we would manage that is if people are shopping using an FHA loan in that area, we do ask our attorneys to look back at the title, make sure that we don't have a deed restriction that might come up with a deeper title search, 15, 20 days into the process when we're past purchase and sale and really anticipating closing. We work with our buyers up front to make sure we have really well-reviewed pre-approval packages, and that helps us close our loans really quickly. Typically 30 days gives us good breathing room, but we stepped in recently and closed a deal in about 14 days after a large bank was unable to get to the table due to some nuances within the property. We have a really high approval rate here at the bank, which we're very, very proud of, over 80%. And a lot of that fallout has to do with property issues and title issues that are beyond our control, and that a lot of buyers just don't have the capacity to wait out over time. That high approval rate's really important to us because it's important to you and it's important to our buyers. We want to make sure that when you're seeing a pre-approval letter from the Cooperative Bank of Cape Cod, you have a high confidence rate that that loan is going to close. Your sellers are going to be happy and your buyers are going to be happy. Just a quick shout out to our local team who covers Cape Cod, the islands, and beyond. We do lend off Cape for our customers as needed, and we do see people crossing the bridge a little bit to get some more affordability. So if you haven't met someone on our team who you love working with, please do reach out or reach out to myself. I'd be happy to make an introduction. We're thrilled to be a part of the association and working closely with you to help home buyers and home sellers in our community.
Thank you, Charlotte. That was a really great update. I really appreciate all the insights that you just shared. I just put your contact information in the chat to everyone. I know that you're not doing as much lending directly yourself these days, but I know that you would be able to direct anyone to the appropriate lender if they had any questions. We just really appreciate you being here today and for always supporting us here at the association.
Happy to be a part of it. Thank you, Jen.
Awesome. Are you going to stick around for a little bit?
I'm going to stick around because I
Okay.
need to learn what's happening and make
Okay,
sure
great.
we're on top of it.
All right. So what I would love to do, we have Alice Ryan joining us. Alice is, let me just get my notes here. So Alice Ryan manages the Barnstable County's Cape Cod Aquifund. She helps homeowners upgrade septic systems and connect sewer, partnering with MassTC to bring practical environmental solutions to our community. We will be joined by MassTC shortly, but I wanted to turn the conversation over to Alice to give us an update as to what's going on when it comes to financing septic solutions in today's market. Alice, take it away.
Wonderful. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. So I am Alice Ryan. I am the program manager for Cape Cod Aquifund. We are formerly the Community Septic Loan Program that's been around since 2007. So some of you may know us by that name. So I'm just going to do a general overview of the program. So Cape Cod Aquifund provides low interest betterment loans to Cape Cod homeowners who are faced with the cost of repairing or replacing their failed septic systems, sewer connections, upgrading to alternative septic systems, which my partner Sarah will be talking about in a little bit. Here at the program, we provide equitable financial assistance to all homeowners across the Cape to help the Cape as a whole meet their clean water goals. Some of the general questions that we get about the program, a lot of folks will call in and say, well, what type of projects are covered under this program? I have this going on. Can I apply? So we work with all folks who have to do a system repair. And that includes folks that have a cesspool that need to upgrade to a Title V. We also work with, complete systems, new systems being put in. We also cover IA systems with the latest and best technology. We also work with folks who are being mandated to connect to sewer connections. We're seeing a lot of that right now in the towns of Mashpee, Orleans, Howrich. So those are also covered under the program. Another question that we get a lot is what types of properties are eligible to apply under the program. So right now we only work with residential properties. That could include a single family home, a multi-family home like a duplex, condominiums. Sometimes condominiums could be anywhere from 4 units all the way up to 40 or 50 units. We work with apartment buildings. We do work with second homeowners as well. The only thing that the program is currently not able to work with would be any type of commercial or business property. So that would mean anything that would be held in an LLC, for example. We used to do some of that in the past, but the rules and the regulations have since changed. The program does offer low interest rates. However, for any home that's currently on the market or is going to be going on the market, the interest rate for the betterment loan would put them at 5%. And I think that's most applicable here in this case. So the homeowner would be looking at an interest rate of 5%, which is still a pretty good rate given today's environment. So another question we get a lot is, what type of work does the program cover? If I'm having engineering done, can I roll that into my loan? Yes, you can. There's a well on the property. The well needs to be moved over into a different part of the yard. That is something that we would also cover under the loan program. A lot of times, if conservation might be involved in the project, or there has to be some clearing or disturbances of a driveway or a patio area, any of those type of disturbances could be rolled into the loan program.
Alice, can I interrupt real quick? We have a question from one of the members.
Sure.
So there's a question about, are there any income restrictions?
Yes, so I'm getting to that. That was my next
sorry, okay.
No worries. Okay. So now getting into kind of the terms and the conditions that we use. So the loan is a 20-year loan, and it is a betterment loan. We do ask folks to sign a betterment agreement with us. That betterment agreement does go on record at the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds. So we do a full title rundown, title search, and as long as that is clean and clear, there shouldn't be any issues. There is a $400 early payment fee for the first year. So in this case where, if they're buying or selling a home and there's a betterment loan, most of the time, that's going to have to be paid off at closing. So there would be the chance of seeing that $400 early repayment fee on the loan. If there's a betterment loan on the property and the homeowner goes to sell that, 5, 8, 10 years down the road, they would also need to have, like any other loan, that would need to be paid off at closing. So as far as the financial requirements go, there is no credit check associated with the program. We do ask folks to provide the first 2 pages of last year's 1040, a current copy of the mortgage statement so that we can verify that the mortgage is current. And then we do the title search. For folks that are not selling it, I don't want to go into too much detail about the financial requirements because, the interest rate does fluctuate. And each situation is different. But for example, if a homeowner was just using the program and not selling the property, and they made under 100,000. Well, depending on whether they were a septic system or a sewer connection, there would be the possibility for that homeowner, say if it was a sewer connection, they could possibly qualify for the 0 or the 2% loan. But we kind of want to stay a little bit clear of that because, you know, where this is buying and selling properties, it would put it at the 5%. So that's kind of a quick overview of the program. We work with as many folks as we possibly can. Very, very, very few folks are not able to use the program. There is a link on the Barnstable County website for Aquifund. We have an amazing staff. We're small but mighty. So certainly if there's any questions or if the homeowners have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.
I just put the link to your program in the chat so everyone has it. And I'll also include your contact info.
Wonderful.
Yeah, looks like we have another question coming in. Someone's asking, is this a quasi-governmental agency or organization, or is this private?
No, it's actually funded through the state. So the funding for the program actually comes through the Clean Water Trust at the state level. So they're not county funds. It is funded by the Clean Water Trust, the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust.
Excellent.
And I should probably just put out there just one side note. We're currently seeking additional guidance from the Clean Water Trust and from MassDEP on ADUs. We do get a lot of questions around ADUs from folks. And we're hoping a little bit further down the road that there may be some possibility we can work with folks doing ADUs, but currently at the moment, ADUs is something we're seeking further guidance on.
Excellent. Thank you for that update. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
What I'm going to do, I don't have any other questions at this point, but I'm sure that maybe through Sarah's presentation, we might get some. So I'll just continue to monitor the question and answer in the chat if there's anything that comes up. For everyone that's on the webinar, I did include the resource that Alice had mentioned, also her contact information. It's kind of interesting because I also, not only am I a Cape Cod Cooperative Bank mortgage holder, I also was a beneficiary of one of the Aquifund septic loans a couple of years ago, so I can speak firsthand to how amazing it is. And I didn't know you at the time, so this is not a personal plug. This is literally just feedback. It was a wonderful program that helped us get what we needed in the time that we needed it the most. So I can't speak, you know, any more highly of the program and your team. They're wonderful. So
wonderful. Thank you for the kind words.
I'd like to, I'm going to just we have a question real quick. Let's see. Okay, someone's asking it. So we'll make sure that we provide any of the resources and links. If someone's not able to copy and paste, we'll make sure that everyone has everything that we're sharing today. So thank you for that question. What I'd like to do is turn it over to Sarah, Dr. Sarah Wigington. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. So for those of you that haven't met Sarah before, she's been a popular face with us, helping us with some of the tours that we've done at MassTC. She also participated in our Waterways event, Lunch and Learn, last year. A little background on Sarah. So she holds a PhD from URI. She's got a deep, extensive expertise in nitrogen removing wastewater systems, with over a decade of environmental research. So we're very happy to have you here to provide an update on what is going on in your worlds.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. All right. Hopefully everybody can see my slides. Someone will shout out, I'm sure, if you can't. Right. So I am Sarah Wigington. I am the MassTC Program Manager and the Wastewater Division Deputy Director. And I am mostly going to be sort of contextualizing all that great information Alice told you and how it fits with the rest of our programs in the Wastewater Division. So there's actually 3 programs in the wastewater division. You've already heard from Alice about the Aquifund, which is the funding arm of the wastewater division and helps homeowners get the infrastructure that they need in the ground where they need it. And then there's our oldest program that I run, the Massachusetts Alternative Septic System Test Center. It was founded in 1999 by a gentleman called George Hoyfelder, who's thankfully still around helping us out all the time. And it was really established to test innovative and alternative septic systems, which is really what we're here to talk about today. And then our newest program is the Septic Utility Program. And this program was established to support towns and homeowners as they roll out more of these innovative and alternative systems. We're going to be using these more and more, and we need to protect that infrastructure by actually managing it. So that's why the Septic Utility Program exists, is to have a regional level of management for the innovative alternative systems. There was a question earlier about regulatory power. I'll just mention this here. We actually have no regulatory power really at all. The county exists to support towns and homeowners. So we work in the wastewater world. We try to come up with solutions, both technology solutions, funding solutions, management solutions, but we are just support. We don't have any regulatory power at all. That only comes from the state and the towns. So as I'm sure everyone knows, we have very little centralized wastewater treatment on Cape Cod. Pretty much everywhere relies on Title V septic systems. This is a little bit out of date of a map at this point because this was 2022 sewered areas. And as everyone knows, if you've been driving around the Cape, there's been a lot of sewer work going on since 2022. So there's probably more black areas, which indicate the sewered areas now. Mashpee has done a ton of work. Barnstable is going full sewer where they're really rolling that out. And so, yeah, there will be a little bit more black, and we'll continue to see more and more of those sewered areas, which is great. We need sewer where sewer makes sense. But you can see all the brown area on the Cape is where we're relying on Title V systems. So those areas that are going to have to upgrade to meet their watershed plans that towns are working on now are really going to have to utilize these innovative alternative systems fairly heavily in those brown areas. I don't know who has been on a tour of MassTC, but I think probably a number of folks in the audience have. So this might be a little bit old information for some folks, but for anyone who hasn't been to our facility, this is a pretty good timeline, historical timeline of what this facility is like. And I do encourage you to come visit MassTC if you haven't yet. It was established in 1999, as I previously said, and that was because in the early 90s, nitrogen was identified as a problem for Cape Cod estuaries, causing algal blooms and reducing the environmental health of the estuaries, which eventually will have effects on home values, property values, all that. Alternative systems did enter the scene in the late 90s, but there was no real vetting process for that. And so that's why the Massachusetts Alternative Septic System Test Center opened, was to provide third-party testing for these alternative systems that were making claims about specifically their nitrogen removal. In the early 2000s, technologies first really got established to deal with nitrogen, and we started seeing more of these innovative alternative systems on the Cape. In the 2010s, we get more advanced technologies. Things start dealing with phosphorus removal, removal of other contaminants that we're starting to become worried about. And then in the beyond, where we are now, we're still thinking about nitrogen removal. We're still thinking about phosphorus removal, but we're also thinking about technologies that can remove other contaminants for us as well, that we're starting to be more worried about. If anyone has, heard a lot of the buzz about PFAS, that's one that, we're very concerned about and does accumulate in wastewater. So I already touched on this a number of times, but why are we treating wastewater? We are treating wastewater to get the yucky stuff out of it before it gets back into our surface waters and our drinking waters. So the main reason we treat wastewater is to keep the bad bacteria out of it, because we don't want to be like the guy on the right there having an upset stomach. And that's really the main reason why we're treating wastewater. Our Title V systems and our sewers do a great job for this level of treatment. It's pathogen pathogen removal. It's really just keeping everybody healthy. And again, our Title V systems, the ones we've had for a long time, do a great job at this. These are examples of conventional on-site treatment. We've got a cesspool on the left, and unfortunately, cesspools are still not widely used, but still widely an archaic leftover on the Cape. There are many cesspools and cesspits still in use on the Cape. And that's very unfortunate because they provide very, very little treatment of almost anything. They do barely enough pathogen removal, but if everybody had these, we would be in trouble from a pathogen perspective. And that's really why we have the more conventional system on the right. That's going to be more like a conventional Title V system with a septic tank, a soil treatment area, not just a pit where you're putting all of the untreated waste. This conventional system on the right does take care of all of our public health concerns. We don't have any pathogen concerns from the systems on the right that are, again, conventional Title V systems, but they don't really do anything for nitrogen removal. And nitrogen is public enemy number one from wastewater septic systems, especially on the Cape. That is what is really the main cause of a lot of our algal blooms and any environmental degradation that's happened in our estuaries is because of excess nitrogen from septic systems. The other option that we've already touched on is centralized treatment or sewers. This is just sort of an example of where you're definitely going to use a sewer. You're definitely not going to use on-site, right, in a city. But there are, many places on the Cape that aren't as built as, I think this is a picture of Boston. I can't really tell. Obviously aren't as, urban as that, but still do need sewer because the population density, it makes sense, right? But there's lots of areas on the Cape where a sewer is just never going to make sense because the population is not dense enough. And again, we've already touched on, why we're actually treating wastewater, but just sort of to send the message home, we're trying to keep nutrients out of the wastewater. And if excess nutrients get in the wastewater, nutrients in this case being nitrogen and phosphorus, we get these algal blooms. And then we also are starting to worry more about these contaminants of emerging concern, pharmaceuticals, personal care products, and PFAS. And this is stuff that we're really starting to research at MassTC, but again, really main focus for us and on the Cape is nitrogen, public enemy number one, causing all these algal blooms. And this is just sort of some of the headlines that have been in the news. It doesn't look great for the Cape to have these sort of headlines, nationally about our waters. Not great for property values. And we can fix this. That's, I think, one of the great things about where we work, what Alice and I do, is that we work on the solutions. And so one of the solutions for this nitrogen problem is innovative alternative septic systems. This is an example of how a system might change if you did create an innovative alternative system at that site where a conventional system was. So on the left here, we have a traditional system with a septic tank leading to a leach pit or leach field. Again, you get good pathogen removal, good bacteria. Nothing's going to make you sick coming from these, but not any nitrogen removal. So on the right, we have an innovative alternative septic system. And in the case of this technology that I'm actually showing here, this is a schematic of the nitro technology. You can actually drop in the nitrogen removing system between an existing septic tank and leach field. But even if it's not the nitro, the treatment train is going to look very similar, where you have a septic tank, then you have the unit that's actually going to do the nitrogen removal, and then you still do have the final dispersal leach pit area. And so we have been working on these and testing them as third-party testers since the late 90s. We continue to do that today. These are just 3 examples of advanced septic systems that are out in the field that we monitor and research, and at least 2 of these, no, all 3 of these have been at MassTC for their early testing. So the one on the far left is the nitro system that is used pretty widely on the Cape and also in Martha's Vineyard. The middle one is the Fuji Clean CRX. This one is one of our test systems that does nitrogen and phosphorus removal at the same time. And then the one on the right is an Advantex EcoPod, also used pretty extensively in New England for nitrogen removal in general. We also have been getting our toes wet into the world of eco-sanitation, which is this kind of wild idea that instead of going to the restroom in clean water, you actually source separate the waste and make a usable product from that waste. So in this, we've got in this slide, I've got a bunch of examples of urine diverting toilets, composting toilets, and on the left side, I have an example of a product, We Bloom, that's actually a urine-derived fertilizer that is recently been gone through the regulatory approval process in Massachusetts. So now we do have a allowable urine-derived fertilizer in Massachusetts, which is pretty awesome. It saves a lot of energy if we can kind of close that loop on our waste production. Right now, we have kind of an open loop where we create energy, we put it into our food system, we excrete it, and then we take that energy out of it, using a lot of energy to pull the nutrients out. If we can, close that loop and make it so we can reuse those nutrients in some product or beneficial way, like the urine-derived fertilizer, that could potentially save a lot of energy and also be a money-making venture for somebody. I think I've already kind of gone over a lot of these points, but this is just sort of the overview of MassTC. I've mentioned that we were, established in the late 1990s. We mostly do third-party testing for septic system technology. We're also a place for research and development of these IA technologies, which is really important. There's not a lot of places that exist in the world for these technologists to come and, put their systems through the test with real wastewater. We're one of the few facilities that exist that can do that. We do global testing for companies across the globe. And we also importantly do a lot of public tours and outreach like today. And I think a lot of people on the call have probably been on our tours. If you haven't, definitely recommend it. I think it's a pretty big hit. There's usually a coffee truck when Jennifer organizes their tours at our site. So definitely recommend. And yeah, it's one of our favorite things to do is get out and talk to people who we're actually serving. Because like I said, that's really why we exist, is to support you, support town, support homeowners. This is sort of the last couple of things I'll touch on are how the septic utility program supports MassTC and the Aquifund. We have had the Innovative Alternative Barnstable County database for over 15 years now. It has been absorbed in the septic utility program, but it is where we keep track of all of these IA systems. I think there's this idea that these are sort of like peripheral systems, they're experimental, no one's using them. No, a lot of people are using them. There's over 4,000 in the state that we include in our program. If you're on the Cape or Islands, your system has to go into our database. And then if you're not on the Cape or Islands, and you have a pilot approved or a provisionally approved system, the state will makes the town use our database to organize those provisional and pilot approvals. And it is really just to organize the data that's coming in about the performance of these systems. So private operators are going out, sampling the systems, maintaining the systems, and then they're using our database to keep track of that, to say, I maintained it on this day, I did X, Y, and Z to it. The nitrogen coming out of the system was this level, which meets its permit or doesn't meet its permit. And all that information gets sent to us, the state, and the local officials. It's all publicly available. I can send this link to Jennifer. Maybe she can find it quickly to drop in the chat. But all of this information that is being sent to our database for the nitrogen performance, how these are working, is on our website. And you can go through and click the different systems and you can get information about how the systems are performing. And then I'll finally just touch briefly on our septic utility program. I mentioned that they are the program that has absorbed the IA database. They have also expanded their services much outside of the IA database. We got a grant from the EPA to actually establish this program and hire a program manager and a couple of staff to actually go out and act as a utility for septic systems, which is not something that exists anywhere really in the world. There's a few very small private endeavors to do this, at a regional level, but this is the biggest, most widespread attempt to try and create a utility for septic systems. Sewer systems have a utility, and that's one reason they work so well, is because they have someone who is managing them, keeping an eye on them, making sure that that infrastructure works the way it's intended to. It's kind of wild that we're, talking about putting in all of this money into these innovative alternative septic systems and without an established way to manage them. So again, that's why the septic utility program exists. Again, I've already kind of belabored this first point, but functions like a sewer utility. It ensures optimal performance and regulatory compliance, and also the longevity of that infrastructure. These, homeowners are, we know they're investing a lot of money into these systems, so we do want to make sure they work for the intended purpose. We also are, of course, supporting towns and homeowners with cost-effective solutions. Okay, and I think that is all I have today. I do hope you follow us. Sorry, I'm getting a little interruption. I do hope that you follow us, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
So I did get a couple, if you are so willing, and what I might do is also bring Alice back on as well. Let me just get her, just in case there's any other questions that someone else may have. Let me just see here. So I did get a question for you, Sarah, about, let me just go back to it. Managing too many different things right now. So we did get a question about the annual upkeep expense on IA systems. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, yeah, it is right now kind of the Wild West. It's just all private industry. It's just that's the setup right now is you are required in perpetuity of the system to have an O&M agreement. So someone has to come to your system and maintain it. If it is a generally approved system, that is an annual visit. If it's provisionally approved, that it's actually quarterly. So you can imagine that changes the cost significantly. If someone has installed a system that's a provisionally approved system, which by the way, a nitro system is only provisionally approved at this moment, a service provider has to come to their house 4 times a year. That can get expensive. And it really is set by private industry right now, the cost. And we've seen wide ranges from a few $100s to over $2,000, just really depending on how often you're going and what the type of system is. So we do at the Septic Utility Program, that is sort of one of our main initiatives, is to try and bring some equalization to that for people who do, towns or homeowners who do want to be in the program. It can sort of be thought, we're thinking of it like insurance. Everybody pays into insurance, but you don't always need it, and everyone paying into it lowers the cost. So we think that if we can sort of, do this on a larger scale, not just one homeowner here, which is how the private industry is doing it, if we can sort of, raise that and have lots of customers at potentially a town level, then that might really reduce the cost. It's really going to be about how the town or the homeowners in the area choose to utilize the septic utility program, whether that's sort of going to be a way forward for the people in that area. But just the bottom line is those are very expensive. And right now it is sort of just the private industry setting the cost.
We've heard that from a couple different sources. So that definitely that's what we've been hearing.
It's definitely something that we are interested in, like I said, attempting to equalize through some sort of like insurance model or something like that.
We do have a couple of other questions, but I wanted to ask, because I think that there is a thread between what you're doing, Sarah, and what Alice is helping homeowners achieve. Can the two of you just briefly touch upon how do you actually work together?
Well,
Alice unmuted. I don't know if she has something to say, but
okay. We're all part of
Alice is, she's getting there.
No, we're all part of the same team. We're in day-to-day contact. So Sarah's group is a little more focused on the science behind the systems and approving and what works and what doesn't work, where Aquifund is more into, all right, how can we help homeowners financially finance, the technology and the systems.
And I think another way that we work together very frequently is connecting homeowners, regulators, towns to the division that they actually need to talk to. Sometimes homeowners have really specific questions for Alice about how a technology works or which technology maybe they should use, and then she's going to kick that call over to me. I get calls all the time that are about people asking questions about loans. And I can say, "Oh, I don't do that, but someone on our team does." And I kick that over to Alice.
Yeah.
It's good to hear, because sometimes you just never know if things are so siloed that you can't direct, like for our members that are on the webinar, they want to make sure that when they're passing people over to either one of you, that they're, getting what they need. So it's good to hear that you have that communication loop, within your departments. One
And
of our
usually
members, oh, go ahead.
If I might add, usually for the homeowner themselves, their first kind of point of contact after they have their system pumped and it's deemed in failure, that contractor or company that's doing the pumping does a report to the local board of health. And usually the local board of health is going to be like the first point of contact for the homeowners, but we work very closely with all 15 boards of health. That's an ongoing conversation. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of outreach that we do. We also have helped several of the Cape towns develop almost like a subsidy and grant type program. Some of the towns are trying to buy grinder pumps in large bulk volume to help bring down the cost. Some of the towns with the IA systems are trying to do little grant programs. So there's a lot of outreach and education that goes on across the board and all of the local partners that are involved.
Great. Another question that we have several that are coming in, so this is great. One question that I received is someone's wondering how the alternative systems align with Title V requirements, and do they meet those for conveyance purposes?
So the alternative systems are now in Title V. So there's been in 2024, Title V was updated. And now in nitrogen sensitive areas, IA systems are the requirement. Unless you have a town-wide comprehensive watershed management plan, and if you're in an NSA, nitrogen sensitive area established by the state, your Title V system has to be an IA system. So they are within Title V now, and they're the requirement if you're in a nitrogen sensitive area. I think that answered the question.
Sure. Speaking of nitrogen, I have a question that is, what happens to the nitrogen in those systems?
That's a great question. That's such a great question.
I thought it was
I
too.
didn't get into the biochemistry of nitrogen removal, but the short answer is it bubbles out and becomes nitrogen gas, and we're breathing 78% nitrogen gas. So it bubbles out of the system and becomes harmless gas if the system is designed in the right way to have the microbes doing their jobs. But a lot of them aren't designed, a lot of the conventional systems are not designed that way. That's why the nitrogen does not bubble out as a gas. But in IA systems, it does.
That's great. Okay, another question is, how many companies are jumping into this market? And is there any oversight to make it easier for the homeowner to identify a legitimate company?
That's a really good question. So for a homeowner, I would say a homeowner should be working with their designer, and the engineer should have a good reason for why they're choosing the system they're choosing if it's not a widely used system. And you can determine if it's a widely used system by looking at that technology page that I sent, or at the state approval pages. The state approval page has all of the IA systems that are approved and their approval levels. So there are 3 approval levels. The widest, most you can use it anywhere if you have a general approval. And then provisional approval is down below that, and then pilot approval below that. And those are all listed. And if I was a homeowner trying to replace a system, I would target those general or provisionally approved systems. You don't really probably want to be a pilot system unless you really, really know what you're getting into. So that would be my advice to a homeowner, is to make sure that there is a lot of those systems already installed, and that there's data coming in about those systems, which you can find on our page.
Great.
And I think there was a question about the number of technologists coming in. We do already have a lot of nitrogen removal systems established, and we are seeing more interest in the higher levels of nitrogen removal that's sort of going to be needed in our area. So we're seeing that come in. We have 2 technologies that are like really on their way to general approval, that do a great job that do similar jobs as sewer does to nitrogen removal, which is very impressive.
Alice, a quick question for you that I just thought of. When it comes to some of these systems that are very expensive and very pricey, do you have limitations on how much you'll finance when it comes to some of these new technologies? So different from just regular Title V septic.
Right. No, we work with everyone because the end goal is to help Cape Cod meet the clean water goals across the board.
Excellent. Good to know. Okay, so we're going to question about Title V septic inspections. So what is a Title V septic inspection going to look like upon transfer? What is the cost? And will it be necessary if it is consistently being monitored?
So this is just to clarify, the question is, the situation is I'm selling my house, so I need an inspection and I have an IA system. Is that what is that going to look like? I think because
I'll repeat it exactly as it's written just to be
Oh,
clear.
I'm looking. It's okay, Jennifer. I'm looking at it. I just
Oh,
want to
you
make sure
see it.
I'm
Okay,
understanding
okay.
the question. So I don't know exactly what the cost would be for a Title V inspection with an added IA. I assume it might be a little bit more, but I actually just got my system inspector's license, and there's actually not that many requirements on the IA systems. I think that we basically have to make sure all of the pumps and things are working, which is not because these have getting to sort of the question baked in there, because these are being inspected either annually or quarterly. The system inspection for a house sale is not going to have extensive requirements for the IA portion. It's really just going to be pop off the covers. Is the water moving through it? Is the pump working? So really the main part of that inspection is still going to be about the septic system and soil treatment area.
Great. This is a great question that came in about advocacy. So is there any way for you to advocate to towns if people upgrade to an IA system that they could delay hooking up to sewer so these systems make more sense for longer?
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I mean, we're in constant communication with at least a few of the towns. And oh, sorry, I was like kind of looking at, they answered. Sorry. I'm looking at the questions that Jennifer is reading, so it's helpful for me. Yeah, so delaying hooking up to sewer, I think that is a potential option, but that's tricky because towns are, thinking about these long-term plans. I don't think I'm gonna have a great answer for that. We have been thinking about that a lot and talking to towns a lot about how you can have sort of an intermediate solution before sewers come along. And that's or the question is delaying sewer hookup if you have an IA system. Yeah, that is really going to be up to the town. If you're in an area that's, the town says in this area our plan is to do sewer, we may not be able to be super involved in allowing a variance for that. Going to be up to the Board of Health.
Okay, and that was one of the questions that also came in. I'm sure you can see it. Is that are we relying on state requirements or local town requirements? So you've kind of answered
Both,
that
right,
question.
right. In Massachusetts, we have home rule, so local requirements can always be more stringent than state requirements. But local requirements have to be as strict as state requirements. They can't be less.
And I feel like you did touch upon this, but if someone's asking, I think it's still a great idea to touch on is how many different technologies are currently approved?
I don't know off the top of my head the number, but I'm gonna find the link.
Okay,
There are probably close to a dozen for nitrogen removal and several for phosphorus removal.
great. If you want to send that to me or put it in the chat, if you can
Sure.
find it, I'll make sure that it gets distributed. And then there's another question that came in about, let me just see. This would have been helpful to have my glasses on. It is my understanding that this has not been proven and is acknowledged by the industry that even with the IA systems, we may not meet the nitrogen reduction goals. Can you speak about this?
Sure, yeah. So the systems, we have sort of next gen systems and old gen systems. The old gen systems were not. able to remove enough nitrogen for many of the areas that we need. There's some watersheds where we need a very low nitrogen input, and those areas are going to need sewer. That's just sort of I think where we are. If the IAs aren't going to do it, then you need something that works better. And in general, the sewers do a better job at nitrogen removal. But we need to do as good of a job as we need to do without spending more money than we have to. So many of the new gen systems do work quite well, removing down to levels of a sewer. But it is acknowledged in the industry that the old gen systems do not do that. And so it will be on towns to make sure that old gen systems are not being used where they should not be used. Or to this person's point, we may not meet our goals if we are relying on old gen systems.
Sounds great. Well, at this point, there's no additional questions. We have this scheduled for a little bit longer, but we don't have to keep everyone if we're, go with the content. But what I would like to do is maybe then turn it over, to Alice for any final remarks or any best practices, anything that you want to share with our members and how they can help their clients utilize your resources.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. We work very closely with a lot of the contractors and engineers on the Cape, and they're a great resource for homeowners. And certainly if anybody has any questions, any unusual situations, please don't hesitate to reach out to the office and run that by us. We're here to help.
Excellent. Sarah, any last words or pieces of advice or interesting facts about septics you want to share with?
Oh gosh, I could talk about
today?
interesting facts about subjects all day. But no, I'll just do another plug to come to a tour. It is a lot of fun and you get to see these systems sort of in person. And yeah, we do have a lot of fun. We're a silly bunch.
You are. And we actually did just, a couple more questions just popped in, see?
Okay.
Okay, so can you review what areas of the Cape still may need IA systems? I thought all the towns applied for the watershed permit.
So all of the towns did a notice of intent to file. They're all at different stages, but at this point they have all filed the notice of intent to do a comprehensive watershed management plan, which just means they have filed the paperwork to say they are going to make a plan. And that plan is a 20-year-long plan, and each town will do something different. But each town is probably going to use a lot of IA systems and a lot of sewer. They're also going to do fertilizer management, cranberry bog restoration, those sorts of things to also manage nitrogen, but it is really going to be really wastewater focused. And as towns are making these plans, but I don't think any town is to the point where they know exactly where they're going to say we're going to draw a circle. All of these houses need sewer. We draw this circle. All of these houses need IA. I do get the sense that is that's how it's going to go. But yeah, the towns are still making those plans. So I think if you're interested, you should definitely get involved in Board of Health meetings. Select board meetings are also, that's another group that is making these plans. Yeah, get involved with your local government if you're interested in these things.
My dog is deciding to bark at this very moment, which is always what happens. So there's a question that I'll let you read. I'll mute myself.
Would you happen to have a list of engineers and contractors that you work with regularly? Atlas, do you have such a list? We have a list of, I think there's a county list.
Yeah, we don't actually have a list that we recommend to folks. I know a lot of the local boards of health do, because some of the boards of health have different guidelines for their contractors and their engineers. So in that case, I would suggest that the homeowner does reach out to the local board of health, and they should be able to give them, a list based off of what the board of health is requiring from the contractor or the engineer.
Oh, and someone's saying that they got one from their Board of Health. So that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Lisa. Appreciate the answer.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I don't see any additional questions. I want to thank you both for your time today. We did put throughout the chat your contact information, but for those on the webinar, what we'll do is we'll make sure that when we send it out, the recording, when it goes out to you, we'll also list Sarah and Alice's contact information and some resources that they shared so that you have it at your fingertips to help your clients. Thank you both for being here. We appreciate all that you're doing for the Cape Cod community, and we hope to see you soon.